Good morning, or almost afternoon to some of you. We are happy to be here. As a member of the President's Council, I remember when we started thinking about this experience and this panel specifically. And we talked about mentoring. It was really important to us that authenticity in mentorship is a key to a successful mentoring relationship. And so when we assembled this panel that you'll get the experience of hearing from today, what I want you to take from that, or what I want you to listen specifically for, are things like trust and transparency, legacy, because your mentorship can create a legacy, a relationship for you that you build on as you start to mentor others. So thank you for joining us today. This fabulous panel we have with us has over 100 years of Wal-mart experience, and that's something to be proud of. And it's something that you can trust has lots of mentoring relationships as mentors and mentees. So without further ado, I'll introduce the panel. Our first panelist is Julie Murphy. Julie Murphy's been with the company for 30 years, and she started as an hourly trainee in the operations division and is now a proud member of the President's Council of Global Women Leaders and a senior vice president. Our second panelist, executive vice president, my apologies. Our second panelist is Shana DeSmit. 23 years with the company, started as an hourly cashier, worked through operations, has been in HR, innovation, and is now a vice president and the local RGM. Our third panelist is Yuli Carrera. He's spent 20 years with the company. He's been in operations. He started as an hourly associate, a market manager, and now in innovation. Our last panelist, Tanya, 15 years with the company, and is now in merchandising, but was a store operator, store manager, and this panelist we've assembled has great experiences that we'd love to share with you. Thanks. Julie. Julie, you're a leader that I am proud to say I'm a mentee of, and I know that mentoring is very important to you. Can you share with the audience why it's important to you and what successful relationships look like?
I can. Thank you, Latriece. I appreciate it. It's great to see everyone and welcome. Mentoring is obviously important to me. As a 30-year associate, I have been a product of mentoring and have had the great fortune throughout my career for leaders to really identify and to reach out to me as a leader and provide those opportunities sometimes before I even realized that I was ready for that opportunity. And so it's been instrumental in my career. And certainly I know and I recognize that I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for my mentors and mentees that I've worked with along the way. You know, when I step back and think about my career, there's a mentor that stands out, and I think many of you may know the late Dave Jackson. He was the mentor for me that actually was the first person to promote me to store manager. And so I had the opportunity to work with Dave in different capacities. And what I really loved about Dave is his transparency, right? It was always there to give feedback. But throughout the years, whether I directly reported to Dave or indirectly, he never lost touch with me. And I think that really sent a message to me as you think about legacy and keeping touch and making sure that you bring our journey full circle as associates with the company. Dave was a great example of that. And so whenever we would be in different working divisions or parts of the company, he would stop in and check on me, to make sure, Latriece, that I was doing what I had committed to do, but also just to make sure that he was there, and he would let me know that if there's anything I needed, any advice or any support that was necessary, that he was there to help and to take care of that for me. You know, when I step back and look at a relationship in mentoring, I think it's built on trust. And it's really that relationship that you develop that has that foundation of trust, and you have to get comfortable with that relationship because it is a two-way communication when you think about what you're developing and what you're working on together as individuals. And I think the transparency is critical. We often want to give feedback that's one-dimensional, and we want to think in terms of what we can give that is positive, but I think it's where we grow as leaders and individuals when we have that transparent feedback that is full functioning and provides that opportunity and identifies some of the gaps that we may have as leaders.
That's fantastic. And you've shared that legacy of leadership with some of our panelists today. Shana, you have the next question, and you're a beneficiary of Julie's mentorship. Tell us a story about how you've made mentoring relationships work and how they've helped your career.
Thanks, Latriece. I think one of the things that you have to do is you have to commit to investing in it. And I think about mentorship as a partnership, really about how are you going to give as much as you get. And so it's an expectation, and Julie talked about transparency, but there's been many tough conversations I can attest to over the years. I guess the finger I've been exposed to, but those conversations are truly meant to make me better. And so we laugh about it today. Over 20 years, our relationship's been together. And whether I was in operations, whether I was in HR, she would, just like she talked about Dave, it's about that touch, high touch communication, and how is she going to make sure over the course of the years that we stay connected. I think the other thing, as we as leaders are asked, we have to develop the next generation. And so you think about how we build our own legacy. It's who are you developing? Who are you investing in? You think about mentorship as tithing your time. So if I give 10% of my time to talent development, and it's not the check the box, I've done a mentoring circle or I've had a conversation, it's in the moment. It's in the forfeit section in a Wal-mart supercenter. It's in a back room. It is truly high touch, high communication investment of your time and talents. And I think about one particular situation. As a young store manager, I had my first store. I was very excited. It was going very smoothly. We just rounded a year, very happy where I was at. And Julie calls me and she's like, I have an opportunity. And in Walmart's true terms of, I have an opportunity for you, it's I have the next challenge. And that looks like a supercenter that had just opened up. And it was what we would classify as a store that was struggling. They needed leadership, and they needed the investment that it was going to take to really get involved, spend time with the team, and really develop them. And one of the things that we experienced early on, about 4 months in, I wasn't feeling good, went to the doctor, found out I was expecting, and not only expecting, I was having twins. And you should probably call your mom or your dad or somebody to celebrate. I'm calling Julie going, I can't do this. You've made a mistake. What am I going to do? This is over. I will not be able to handle it all. And she really stepped back and pushed me to think about myself as a leader. And she said, you absolutely can do it. We're going to support you, but you've got to lead differently. And so the challenge was on me to think about, what am I going to do differently, and how will I lead differently to make sure the team, in preparation for the time I'd be away, was set up for success. And I look back today on that challenge and that push. What would have happened if she didn't say, stay the course, you can do it, we'll support you. But also to think about how I let other people get the experience and the exposure when I thought it had to be centered around me. Today from that team, there's a market manager, there's several store managers that were in my team, whether it's hourlies or assistant managers, that today have greater responsibility within our organization. So I think it's about just really investing, being true to who you are, and pushing each other out there.
That's a great answer. And Yuli, I think you're one of the beneficiaries of the relationship with both Shana and with Julie. Tell us how you make mentoring relationships work and how you've benefited from them.
Yeah, I think I've heard that coming before. I have an opportunity for you. So I think we all have heard that one time or another. So I think all of us can look back into our lives and really see those defining moments in which relationships and mentorship, whatever we want to call them, has made a profound impact in our lives. And I remember as a young store manager, quite honestly, not thinking much about my future. Just happy where I was. I had a great store, great group of associates. And here comes marching in Julie Murphy and tells me, I have an opportunity for you. So with that said, that was my first experience on being challenged to be uncomfortable, to step out of my role and start thinking about what else do I want to do with my career. And not only what do I want to do with my career, but what do I want to do to leave a legacy behind me, and who else are we going to pass that gift to? Because quite honestly, working for this company is a great gift. And I've been privileged to have it for the last 20 years. And I will tell you that that was my first instance in which I was really exposed to what it was to step out of your comfort zone and really start thinking about what else you can do. Fast forward a few years later, and like everything else, life happens. My children got older, they became teenagers. For circumstances in my life that formed how I felt about my relationship in my home, I made a commitment that I was going to, put my career on hold, and I was going to really focus on being there for my children and my wife. And quite honestly, here comes Shana. And like everything else, she took a real true interest on not only what kind of store I ran or what kind of market I ran, but she wanted to know more about me. She wanted to know about my family. She wanted to know what made me excited about what I did for a living. And even though she understood that at that moment in my life, my kids were teenagers, like I told you, and on top of that, my in-laws have come and moved full-time with us for us to care for them. So as you can see, there was a lot of circumstances happening. But the one thing that I remember the most about our relationship is that although the time perhaps might not have been right at that moment for movement, she kept me challenged. She kept me involved. She kept me connected to what was happening and never allowed me to become irrelevant. And I think that's something that your mentor will do for you. So I just gave you a couple of examples of what a formal mentoring relationship would that be. But there's also that informal relationship, which in operations, which is where I based most of my career, is those associates in the store. And it's about those tours in the building when you're touring with department managers or assistant managers, and you are not only talking about the business, but then you're teaching, you're training, but even better than that, you're learning. You're learning about them, and you're learning about their business and their store, and able to have those connections and really take an interest on what else they can do. I will tell you that that brings more value to your career than if I would have stayed back many years back and just simply be happy where I was. Here's what I think mentoring does the most for. I think mentoring helps you do a couple of things that are very important. I think that mentoring helps you paint a path to that future. I think it also allows you to pay it back. And the way you pay it back is by allowing others to realize their potential as well. But I think the most important thing, at least for me, the mentoring is done in my life is it has really created and reinforced the belief. The belief that not only I can, the belief that I will, but yet the belief that is worthwhile. And I think that when we look at mentoring, we need to look at mentoring as a process in which we can truly have that sustainable competitive advantage that we need to have as a company as we move into the next century.
Those are great points, Yuli. And I think you bring home the point that we made earlier about the authenticity in relationships and the fact that in some ways it can be personal, and to have those relationships, it touches every part of you because you bring your whole self to work every day. So I appreciate you sharing those stories. Tanya, tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a store manager and to be the person who's the leader of the store and expected to mentor and lead the whole team. Tell us about your experiences doing that and what it's like to mentor associates in your store or in your market or in your division when you were a store manager.
Sure. So I think back to my time of when, before I became a store manager, I felt like I was going to stay in the East Tennessee area, and that's the only place I wanted to be. And what happened is some things transitioned, and I realized that I needed to really open up the opportunities that could be available for me to continue to grow my career. And when I allowed that to happen, that's when I met Shana, who became a big influence in my life in mentoring me and understanding that, you know, I could be a store manager, I could be a mom, and I could have a career and have it all. So once that happened, I became a store manager, and I learned a lot from that moment of Shana mentoring me. And one of the ways that I learned that is she held a lot of diversity and inclusion events throughout her whole region. And I remember one opportunity that I had with an assistant manager that had come from outside the company, and she didn't feel like she knew the Wal-mart culture and how could she continue to grow her career. So what I did was ask Shana, can I bring someone along, someone that I feel like I want to mentor? And that's when we went to Yuli's market, and they held a celebration of She. During that time, that assistant manager had taken her name out of the hat for a promotion for a co-manager position. And she was on the fence if it was the right thing to do. But during this diversity event and inclusion event, what she stood up in front of everyone and said is, I have the experience and I have the tools. It doesn't matter if I don't know the job. And it was at that moment that I realized, in some way of being a mentor, that I was trying to give her everything. You know, earlier we think you need everything on that list before you can go. I learned something then as a mentor, is that as long as you're capable, you can go to the next level. You don't have to know everything. That assistant manager signed up for the position. She got her promotion 2 weeks later, and she's continued on with her career and moving up in the company. I called her this morning to ask if it was okay if I shared that story. And she said, the most important thing is that you taught me how to mentor other people, and you took a chance on showing me how important it is to go after those dreams and to go after goals that you have for yourself. And so with that, I would say I grew, and it went both ways. I learned how to mentor her, and she learned to hopefully continue to grow and mentor others. So with that, I would say, I look back and say, how far does your influence travel? And so when you sit up here on this panel, you will see that not only Julie has traveled her influence, but Shana continues to influence and travel and influence us through our travels. And just like I think what is important about mentoring is that you continue to influence those.
That's great. And Shana, you've done that in a lot of ways, not only with people who work for you, but across the organization with your peers. Talk to us a little bit about what it's like to mentor across the organization, and not necessarily just to people who work for you, but people who you work for even. How do you do that? An example of maybe perhaps a story where you've done that with Julie.
Well, Julie's still a work in progress, right? No, just kidding. Just kidding. But I think one of the things that we talked about, that we've got transparency and we have trust. And with that, she has an expectation. She has an expectation of me that I have to give her communication. What's going on? How do I keep her connected and grounded? You know, when we think we're headed in the right direction and maybe we've missed a step and we've got to go back and we've got to recommunicate. I think there's parts of it as I step back and I think about my career and the way I look at mentoring, it's not just a ladder that goes up and down, it's also a lattice. And so it's about being a peer mentor, it's about reaching deep into the organization, whether Yuli talked about the department managers, the store managers. I mean, those leaders today, you know, I could name the store managers, the hourly associates that have mentored me, guided me, and still today keep me connected to the business so that I am always involved and always listening. I think the challenge for us, as you think about what do you do with it? And I remember specifically, as I was looking, as the kids started to grow and I was ready to grow my career from being a store manager and take that next step, my world had changed. They introduced the market teams, and so there were all these different roles and all these different opportunities. And you know, one of the pieces of advice I was seeking is, do I really want to do this? Do I give up my store, right? As a store manager, my keys to the building were so vital. Like, to hand over those keys, my whole world was changing. And I was going to have to figure out, what would I get from it? What would I gain? What could I give? You know, from being an operator, what would I give back? Because I think it's just as important from what you get as to what you give. And then how will I use it? So as I saw, you know, feedback from my peers, store managers, whether Julie, but then the tough love that was coming back at me is, how long will you stay? And if you really like it, will you commit? And I think that was, you know, as we think about it, so often as we're pushing people to go, making sure that they also have on the front side some very tough questions that they have to search their souls and really seek about, because mentorship isn't about hearing what you want to hear. It's really truly listening to the feedback and doing something about it.
That's really good. One of the things that if you've ever been mentored by Julie, that you know, is she says feedback is a gift. And we don't always all get the gifts that we were looking for, that we want. But she describes it as a gift. So it's not always exactly what we want. Sometimes it's tough feedback, and you have to push each of us or your mentees to work harder or differently. How do you do that?
You do, and I think anyone, as you said, that knows me and has worked with me, hears me say often that feedback is a gift, and you really truly have to know and to understand that. And to your point, it isn't always what you think you're going to hear, when you're going to hear it, and sometimes it's something maybe you're not prepared for, but you have to know that that feedback comes from a place. I think Judith mentioned it earlier, positive intent. It comes from a place of trust because you've developed that relationship, and you know and you understand where you are in that relationship. And I think most importantly, as you've heard the associates talk today, that it's a two-way street in communication. So it's giving and it's taking as it relates to that feedback. But you've got to know and understand that if we are only receptive to the positive side of the feedback, that we're not going to grow as leaders and we're not going to be developed and as well-rounded as we need to be. And so we don't want to be one-dimensional in giving or receiving that feedback, because that's really where we put ourselves into a new position and we grow to take on those new responsibilities. I think back to many of my situations and my conversations, right, with Dave, specifically, where he, would pull me to the side, and I think I would have thought I knew all the answers, right? I thought I knew it. And he would pull me to the side and give me that feedback and say, no, we need to course correct. And I remember one time I was a brand new store manager, and I was going to go by the book, right? We were going to follow the policy. Well, what I didn't take into consideration were my associates and their impact and really how they responded, or special situations, right, that you have to be mindful of as a leader. And so that was a great learning for me early on to know and to understand that our people are always at the forefront of what we do. And we need to make sure that we're mindful of that. We are in the retail business, but we're also in the people business. And as a leader, that is our responsibility to make sure that we grow and that we develop as it relates to that. And that feedback and that transparent feedback is really what makes us grow and sets us apart. I feel like it was a little bit of a Julie roast here today, because we talked about all of the things that we did or didn't do.
But I think we talked about a legacy of leadership and mentorship, and it's so important to you, to the mentoring relationships that you have, and it's easy to take the things that you teach any of us or all of us to our mentees and set expectations with them of what they should do, so then they take it to their mentees. So it wasn't intended to be a roast, but it worked out just fine.
I think we'll have to talk about that. The finger comment, I think I need to clarify that later, but we'll talk about that. But I think as you look right in the conversation with all of the team members here, it's evident that you surround yourself with great people, and you look for people with skill sets and abilities that you don't have. And so even as a 30-year associate, I'm still learning and I'm still being mentored. So as Shana says, I am a work in progress. We're all works in progress as it relates to that. But that is our responsibility. When we step back and think about how we're going to leave the company and what hands we leave the company in, I think our legacy and our people really, truly make the difference as it relates to that. So very proud of the group, and definitely you can see that they are very talented individuals that know and understand the importance of taking care of people and mentoring people along the way.
It's the most important thing we can do. We obviously have an obligation to take care of the business, but when we talked yesterday, we talked about the impact we have on the company with the more people we impact. So the more we connect with each other, the long-term impact, or the better we have the opportunity to make the business, because we are connecting with people who are in some ways different than us or better at certain things than us. And so we get the advantage of having mentored people who get to do lots of different things. And at the same time, the beauty of it is our successes and their successes. We have a little more time, so I'd like to get some thoughts from you all on, we talked about, Indra talked about a wise and trusted advisor being your mentor, and that in most cases, they choose you. Sometimes there are people that you see that you want to choose to be a mentor, and you don't necessarily have a good way to connect with them. What, any of the panelists, are your recommendations on thinking about, I see someone and they seem awesome, and they seem to be just what I need, because it is an obligation on the mentee to understand what they need from the relationship and be really thoughtful about how to benefit from the relationship, but also how to give to the relationship. So if there are any people on the panel who can talk about, you see that person, you don't know them well, how do you make sure that you get the advantage of relationships and mentors that'll give you a lot of the value that you think you need and see. And it's not necessarily going to be that exact person, but because you connect with lots of different people, sometimes there are opportunities to get the advantage of mentorships. Julie has lots of mentees, as you can tell. So even if you can't get to Julie, if you can get to one of us, there are lots of lessons that she's taught us that we'd be happy to share.
Yeah, that's good. I'll let the Shana, Yuli, or Tanya share their thoughts, and then I'll close.
So I think that, one of the things that we can use is, obviously we have a network that we have established. So whether my connection is through Tanya or Shana or Julie, I think when we seek talent and we look for those leaders in the future, it's not so much that you're thinking about your own circle, but that you're thinking about the needs of the company, because quite honestly, I may not be working with Shana today or Tanya, but at some point we will. We will again. This is a very small, large company. Mm-hmm. And I think that it is something that just keeps giving back. And I think the more we can direct each other and use our connections and continue to promote those individuals that are out there that are displaying those basic beliefs that we have in our company that we hold so dear for our customers and associates. And once we identify those people, use that network that you have built for yourself, because believe it or not, it's there. I think sometimes we are more passive than we should be, but I think that utilizing that network is going to allow you to really reach out far more people than you'll ever dream you can. So I know that we have done that in the past, and it works extremely well. And quite honestly, the satisfaction of seeing someone succeed is really irreplaceable. It's just a great feeling to see people do more they think they can do.
I think sometimes taking the mentoring outside of the facility, taking it outside of the store, going to the diversity events. When I was the store manager, most of my team was very new and they had never attended a lot of the events. So a lot of mentoring began going to those diversity events and really reaching out and finding people that they had things in common, or they had career goals that they had in common that would continue to connect them. So it's very important that you challenge yourself and your teams to get out there and be part of the diversity and inclusion events that happen wherever, if you're in the field or if you're here at the home office, wherever you're at, you should partake in all of those events.
I think the other thing is know what you seek, and I think, Latriece, you mentioned that, but what do you seek from that mentor-mentee relationship? Too often people will be like, will you mentor me? And if I ask the question, what do you seek from me? Because sometimes my skills won't work for you, but I can connect you, as Yuli talked about, to somebody else who can help fill those gaps in. But I think you've got to be a good mentee. Advice, the feedback, all of those things that are given to you, when it's given to you, you have to give it away as well. Keep giving it, and the circle continues. If you think about the amount of associates that you personally can influence and impact in the lives that you change, it is our obligation, and it is our opportunity to impact the future. And it starts with us. And so you think about where we are today and where we will continue to be as a global company. The network is broad, and we've got to utilize all of our resources.
The last thing that I would say, Latriece, is it's a choice. Choose wisely as we think about that, whether you're the mentor or the mentee, and make sure that you select people that will bridge your gaps. Put yourself out there. Don't put yourself in a comfort zone. Make sure that you align yourself with someone that will help you address your gaps. And sometimes that's not easy and it's not comfortable, but you have to do that so that you can grow as a leader as well.
Fantastic. That's great advice. I think we're going to wrap up now.